What is going on, guys? It is Monday night, and I just finished my dinner. Hold on. All right. So what's going on, guys? I do hope that some folks had to do some flying this weekend. And hopefully everybody had a good weekend. It is the start of a new week on Air Marshal Mondays. And today, man, we're docking my pay 20 minutes, folks. I done messed up. So today I wanted to, basically have a little Q&A on the F-18 that we showed on the Motion RC live show this past Friday. So if anybody missed it, it is sitting behind me. The base gray free wing FA-18. I did this in the livery of the VFC-12 Fighting Omars. It is an Adversary Squadron of the U.S. Navy. And I thought maybe some folks might have some questions on how we pulled off the scheme. And maybe, how we went about doing the painting, what types of paints were used, the colors that were used, all that good stuff. So that's kind of how I wanted to start off the show tonight. And see what's out there if anybody wanted to ask any questions. So, Shadow, yes, let's do it. Why'd I do what? Dennis Farley? What'd I do to myself? Brad Butler, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was certainly a labor of love. I have not maidened it yet. I am still waiting for a couple of parts to show up. I had to order a screw set for it, and I need to swap out one of the LEDs. Now, the LEDs aren't going to keep it from flying, but it does have a bad LED on the left side, so I need to pull the cover off, and unfortunately, I have to rip the tape off of the bottom. I probably should have tested the LED before I painted everything, but I'm going to need to pull out the left running light and put a new running light in there. So I'm also waiting for the walkway graphics from Cali Graphics. I decided to get that from Cali Graphics rather than trying to paint that on myself, because that's a pain in the butt. But as soon as I get the walkway graphics and I replace that LED and get the new screw set, because the battery tray, I don't have the screws that hold the battery tray down. I had to use those to install the vertical stabilizer. So there were 4 screws missing when I got it from Dustin. I just ordered a new screw set. It was like $5, and I could probably go to True Value and get them like tomorrow or Ace or somewhere, but I'm gonna wait for them to show up from Motion, and then we'll get it up in the air. Yes. So the paint that I used on the landing gear was the same paint that I used basically everywhere else. So that is it is called Cold White. and it is a Vallejo model color. The model color paints from Vallejo, they are not the same as the Model Air. So the Model Air paints are already thinned out for airbrush use, and they go on nice and smooth. The Model color paints are a thicker acrylic. They're not quite as thick as like a craft paint, like folk art and like the apple barrel paints that you find at Walmart for like 50 cents a bottle. You know, but they're not thin enough to spray through a brush either. So you do have to thin those out before you can use them. So I just squeezed the whole bottle into a separate mixing bottle and put some paint thinner in there, as well as some what do they call that stuff? Like flow enabler. It's like a lubricant that you put in the paint that makes it flow through the airbrush a little easier. And shake it up real good. I put a little glass bead into the bottle. When I am putting the thinner in, I'll put a little glass bead in there, shake it up. And so the white that you see like on here is the same white that I used on the landing gear. Now for metal, I do prep the metal first. So I have an acid wash that I put on there that does an acid etching on the brushed aluminum or on the polished aluminum, and that allows the paint to adhere to the metal better. And then when I am done, I'll do the same top coat. So after painting them, I also did the satin clear coat. Jackson, they did. So there was a VFC 12 F-18 sitting right behind, like center stage behind the announcer booth at the Oceana Naval Air Station Air Show this past weekend. So if any of you guys caught that, you would have seen one of the real VFC 12 F-18s sitting behind the announcer booth. And they are pretty. They're very nice. Cool, Shadow. I look forward to it. I have not made it yet. I think I mentioned that already. And when I do, it will be on camera. So, you know, as good or bad as that may end up being, whatever. I'm looking forward to it. I think it looks awesome. And I know that I can take it off. I know that I can fly it. The only thing I'm worried about is landing it. And, you know, if it lands dirty, oh well. It was a lot of work. But, you know, once we get it on video, it's all real. Mr. George Watts, hello, sir. It is good to see you. So, Chris Reynolds, there is no virtual fly-in tonight. The virtual fly-ins are the first Monday of every month. Randy, I saw that comment, and I may or may not have been in a rubbin' is racing kind of mood. So when we were taking off, you know, for those of you that have seen it, awesome. But for those of you that have not, Motion RC posted a video today where I was flying my Red Avanti in a very large, at least for our field, a very large six plane gaggle. We had 6 Motion RC jets up in the air at the same time in our somewhat small field surrounded by trees. And it was a good time. It was a good time. A good time was had by all. The important thing is that 6 planes took off and 6 planes landed safely on the wheels. Nobody crashed. And we had a drone up there. Alex from Motion RC was chasing us with his drone. So, you know, as bad as the takeoffs may have been, the flying was pretty good and the landings were excellent by everybody. Noons. You know, if I could choose the if I could choose the commercials, I would ban any liberal politics from being on my show ever. Probably any politics at all. But I can't pick and choose which commercials get shown, but I appreciate you, you know, choking through a Biden commercial. Yeah, Gooniac, it was pretty funny. Uh, you know, I thought we were doing intervals, which is why when I, you know, saw everybody else going, you know, it was kind of serial. There was one plane that started, and then another one, and then another one, and then I went, and then there was another plane right behind that, and and he started overtaking me, and I was like, "Whoa," you know, like we both started going at the same time, and I was like, "Wait a minute, I'm supposed to have space." Because my Avanti doesn't track straight; it goes to the left. So, you know, anytime I'm taking off, I usually start to the right side of the runway and just kind of let it drift. I don't really give it a lot of compensation, which is why, you know, it looks like I was trying to squeeze him off to the left side of the runway. I didn't know he was going to sneak up right on top of me like that. But it was fun, man. We had a good time, and nobody crashed. But there were definitely some close calls in the air. Like some of the flyby shots that came from the fixed camera, you just see a whole bunch of planes, you know, that are all flying by. But what you don't see is the chaos coming down the base leg as we were all dropping, um, you know, to get passes for that camera that were in the camera frame. We had a lot of near misses, but you know, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And when you're flying formation, I mean, if you get this close to the guy next to you and you don't take him out of the air, that's not terrible. That's awesome. that's that's right, Mickey B. You know, you squeeze them to the outside and then you take the apex, man, and let them freaking figure it out. That was a that was a racing line right there. Communication would have been awesome, Jeff, and I agree. But we, even though we had talked about it, and we all got lined up on the runway, we only talked about how we were gonna take off for like 10 seconds, and then we just went. You know, it was like send it. So, you know, we had them all lined up on the runway. We were sitting there, and then we had we had like 5 airplanes that were all kind of, you know, diagonally oriented, and then the T-33 that Patrick was flying FPV came up behind us, and I think the intent was that we were, you know, gonna have like 2 second or 1 second intervals between each plane as we took off, you know. So after I go, or you know, the first plane, and then a couple seconds later the next, and couple you know, like do interval takeoffs. But you know, for whatever reason, like the first 3 planes all started rolling at the same time, and when I started rolling, the guy behind me started rolling at the same time, and apparently intervals went out the window. But it was awesome, man. We had a great time. I alluded to good news. Not yet, Gooniac. I haven't really been doing a lot of video watching today, but what is the video? I'll definitely check it out. Was it the one on balancing EDFs? Oh, no, I haven't seen that yet. So what is going on? Captain Photon, Jeff in Old Alabama, Ken Sprouse, Ray, Roach Coach, what's going on, fellas? Good to see everybody tonight. I got my cat hanging out with me tonight instead of the dogs, so the dogs won't be down here. They might be upstairs barking. But if the cat's down here, the dogs, when they're barking, it's usually because Amy is either outside or in the garage or something, and the dogs, are alone, and the cat will go up there and torment them. But if the cat is sitting here, he's not messing with the dogs, which means that they are not going to be barking. Oh, Paul, we definitely got the UMX puppies. They're still here. Yep, Roach Coach, if you don't take videos, it never happened, right? Pixar, it didn't happen. That's the way of the internet. Yep, so I have seen that people are starting to get the 23, I think it's 23 gram servos from Motion RC for their MiG 29s. I have not seen them available yet for sale, but I want to get at least one set of those because I think that, whatever concerns I have about the elevator servos that come stock on the F-18, I don't know. I haven't seen any issues personally where the servos have failed. I've seen issues where the servo linkages have failed. I've seen issues where the servo housing has failed. I've seen issues where the wires were chafed and shorted out due to poor installation, but I have not seen a case where the servo itself failed on one of the F-18s. So, but just to be on the safe side, I'm probably going to get a set of the 23 gram servos for the MiG-29 and throw them in this guy just to rule that out as a possibility. Oh, Jeff, it's going up. As soon as I get the parts I'm waiting for, it will be going in the sky. And something else that oh goodness. So the dog came down here and scared the cat away. Yeah. So that's true. There are some of the planes that have full flying stabs that I've never heard of anybody having elevator issues. Case in point, the F-22. I've never heard of anybody having issues with the elevators on the F-22. It's got full flying stabs. Now, granted, I don't think the F-22 is as heavy wing loaded as the other planes out there that have full flying stabs, so it may be less of an issue when it flies so light anyway. And I never had any issues on the MiG-29 while it was still alive. Now, interesting though, I did find on my Arrows MiG-29, one of the elevator servos is stripped. And I'm not sure if that elevator or that elevator servo stripping is what caused me to crash, or if the crash caused the servo to strip. I'm not one to, to go and blame electronics. I'd like to say that that crash was my fault because I don't think that I should have been as low as I was. Coming through the turn, I was a little aggressive, trying to get through a, kind of a base turn to land the plane in the opposite direction of what I was going to land. So I think that maybe it was my just bad judgment that caused me to crash, but it could have been the strip servo too. So, it is what it is, man. Now, I do have all of the parts for I do have all of the parts for the MiG-29, and that is kind of my next, project. Is I'm not a big fan of the price that Arrows has for the parts for their planes. And I think I may have mentioned that last week. So I am going to make an attempt at repairing the nose on the MiG-29. And I'm not really that concerned about it, to be honest with you, because of the way that the MiG-29 is constructed. Most of the nose is non-weight bearing. So the main, like the front landing gear is supported or supports the weight of the fuselage right on the front, and that is structurally fine. The nose is almost for decoration. It's a battery tray. So as long as it can hold a battery, it's okay. And it's there for, to create some aerodynamics, I guess, but it doesn't really support, the nose. Like, even if I have a hard landing, it's not going to affect the nose at all. So I should be able to do repairs on the nose of the airplane and make them look as good as a busted up airplane is going to look, and send that thing back up in the air again. Other than the nose getting smashed up, the rest of the plane is surprisingly intact. One of the horizontal stabilizers did get bent a little bit, and one of the vertical stabilizers got bent a hair, but that's easily corrected with some hot water massage. You know what I'm saying? The Blue Angels F-18. So that's an interesting question, and if John Noons is still in here, I will attribute him with the method that I use for hanging up my airplanes. So the F-18, let me see if I can do something here. You guys probably don't want to see like everything going on here. So hold on, I'm trying to do some trickery here. Hey, look, it works. So Can you guys hear me? So the question was asked, how do I hang up my airplanes? And I have, you know, all kinds of airplanes hanging on the walls. There's an empty spot right there where the Avanti goes, but that will at least show, you know, what I'm using to hang them up. Right, so all this is a picture hanger hook, right? And on the hook, these are like I think 30-pound hooks, but none of my planes weigh anywhere near 30 pounds. And here on the Viper, you can see that what I've got is like masonry line. So this is like the line that they use, and they'll pull it like super tight, you know, to do masonry. So it can absolutely take the weight of, you know, a 10 to 15 pound airplane, no problem. They're putting way more pressure on that when they're stretching them for masonry. And what I'll do is just tie loops in them and loop them around either the landing gear, and then hang them from the hooks. On the F-18, this is the only one that's like this. I've actually got those hooks running up into the, hold on, let me, hopefully that you guys can still see this all right. I've got those hooks going into the cheater vents on the underside of the F-18. So on that one, I got a little more creative. So hopefully that, oh. Sorry, I didn't mean for it to go upside down. I thought it would still keep filming the right way. It would like automatically flip over. I guess not. So were you guys not able to see the wall hook? You didn't see the wall hook? Sorry. Yep. Sorry guys. It was supposed to be better than that. So I guess what I'm seeing on the camera screen maybe doesn't relate well. You know, so that's the wall hook that I was trying to show you. Can you see it now? there's the hook, and that's the Viper. But yeah, it's way zoomed in. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why. Like what it's showing on the screen is way zoomed in compared to what I'm seeing on the phone. So I apologize for that. My fault. I was trying to be crafty. You know, showing some new ways of filming stuff. But anyway, that's how I have them hanging on the wall, is just with picture hooks. I think they're rated to 30 pounds. I don't have any planes that weigh more than 30 pounds. And using masonry line in loops around the landing gear, or with hooks that go into the cheater vents, but not the plastic parts of the vents. The top, if the plane is facing down, that last little louver in the cheater vent is a plastic facing that's molded into the plane. Um, so I'll hang it from there. But I haven't had any kind of issues with them. They've been hanging like this for about a year. And haven't had any issues with it. Now I am going to have to find a new method because I have more planes than I have space on the wall. So unless I start hanging them out in the garage, that's not going to work for very much longer. I'm going to need to build a plane rack. So I've seen some ideas for PVC plane racks, and this is a good question for the community. Well, I got you guys here for you guys that have the PVC plane racks, where you've got them like stacked up, one on top of the other. What size PVC are you using for that? Because I've got my bench stands that I made from PVC, and I use 3/4 inch PVC, and I don't think that 3/4 inch PVC is going to be able to hold the plane if it's coming from one spot, so that piece of PVC I would think would need to be about yay long. See, that's what I'm thinking is 1 inch. The 3/4 inch, it works okay. So where you've got it, I mean, say I've got the PVC coming up, going up the wall, and I've got like the T's where I can have a piece of PVC coming out that I'll set the plane on top of. You guys aren't having any issues with the 3/4 inch sagging a little bit? Now, when you put them in there, are you using like PVC, like the primer and the cement to put them into that T? Is that how you're getting them to stay? Because I would think that, the 1 inch is going to be, I think, plenty sturdy enough. But like the 3/4 inch just seems awfully flimsy. And maybe if you are using the the PVC primer and the PVC cement to put it into the T, I can see where it may add some rigidity, maybe. Well, I agree that the 3/4 inch will hold a lot of weight, and the way that my stands are built, like my pit stands, um, like the 3/4 inch supported on both ends will hold any plane that I've got, no problem. Where I've got about a 18 to 24 inch length, depending on which stand I'm using. I think one of them is 24 inches and one is 18. Just for bigger airplanes. But either one of them will hold a plane up, no problem. But it's supported on the front and the back. And I think if I were to pull one side off of there, and try to put a plane on there, that's going to start to sag down. So Schedule 40 PVC is the weak stuff. I think if I was going to use 3/4 inch, I could get away with it if I was using Schedule 80, like the gray high pressure PVC, like 3/4 inch Schedule 80 PVC. That's badass stuff. The Schedule 40, the white stuff, is the flimsy stuff. Oh, Schedule 80 PVC is badass. Yeah, Schedule 80 is the same outside diameter. I think the inside diameter is a little smaller, and it's made to a higher pressure specification. So it is a thicker wall and it's a different material. It's still PVC, but it's a higher grade material. It is extremely stiff. Whereas Schedule 40 PVC is a lighter weight, kind of flimsy. The Schedule 80 is a much higher grade PVC, but it's also a lot more expensive. No, conduit is a completely different type. Well, it's not a completely different type. I think it's still PVC, but plumbing PVC and electrical PVC are not the same. And typically what we're talking about is plumbing PVC used for supply and return lines in like liquid plumbing. Electrical PVC, the connectors are different. It's a different type of PVC. It doesn't feel the same either. Uh-oh, Shadow. That's true, TNRC. You probably can't get T-fittings for conduit. And the fittings that I have found for conduit are typically going to be a lot different. So for like electrical conduit where... Hold on. Sorry. So Amy is outside watering the plants, and the dogs can see her out the window, and they're yelling at their own mom, like, "Shut up, you idiots!" Excuse me. Yes. So electrical conduit, like a 90-degree electrical conduit, has to adhere to like ANSI standards. So it's got a radius to it, so you can get a 90-degree bend where like a 90-degree plumbing fitting does not have to adhere to those same standards. So it can be just straight like boop, boop, like 90 degrees, where you can get a 90-degree turn in electrical pipe, but the electrical pipe, has to have some radius to it. Yes. You do have to pull wires through electrical piping or push them through, depending on which end of the pipe you're on. It is going good, David, yourself. What is up, Kenny? Yes. Ricky, that's my job. To explain things like a submariner. So, Nathaniel, usually if I'm pushing the wires through the conduit, so anytime I'm hanging electrical conduit, if I know what's going to be terminated on both ends of that conduit, I will run the wire through the conduit and then hang the conduit. It's much easier. Much easier. Hide your overcharged batteries. So I haven't tried one of the EC 1500 yet. You know, for me that was always kind of a goofy looking airplane. Although I do like twins. I'm just not a big fan of like that big guppy cargo plane looking thing. You know, that's just not something that excites me. Um, and I know that like look, there's sorry, I keep like scratching my nose because I I think that I may be like allergic to cats, but I don't care. We have one anyway. Mickey B, yes, the Arrows MiG 29 is the next project. So let me go grab that real quick. I will be right back. That's a fun thing to take a look at. All right. So I went and grabbed the MiG 29, and I mean there are some parts to it that have like minor cracking and things like that. The canopy has some cracking in it, but I don't care. The spar, the wings are good. You know, the wings didn't really take any damage at all, that I can tell. So the wings are solid. Those are in good shape. We can reuse the wings all day. And most of the aft end is still in good shape. This horizontal stabilizer got a little bit bent, but that's going to be easy to get back in shape. And I think this vertical stabilizer got a little bit bent, but that's also going to be easy to get back in shape. The blunt force trauma came to the front of the airplane. And the reason I was saying earlier that I'm not that concerned with it is because the retract in the MiG 29 is here. You know, so all that weight, the force of that would be taken like right here, which is, you know, obviously aft of the brake. You know, so with the brake being here and everything else going forward, I think that even if I were to do a crappy repair to the plane, that it would still be able to take, you know, a fairly rough landing without compromising the repair made to the nose or rebuilding the nose onto the front of the plane. So, you know, here where it broke, what you guys can't see is kind of how it's like a wavy line right there. You know, see how that kind of is wavy where it smashed in and busted the nose off. That's all kind of compressed. So I'll basically have to, you know, get all of this part, you know, get the hot water all over it and get that massaged out and back straight again. This side needs to get back straight again. But I think overall, it's a pretty repairable, you know, repairable airplane. You know, there's certainly some parts in here that are going to need some TLC, but I think all of it is capable of being fixed. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to fix it. I definitely think it's capable of getting in the air again, and I think that even if all else fails, and I can't, you know, glue the pieces back together, which I should be able to, I think if I go and, like, I've still got the battery tray in there. The battery tray did break, right? The piece of plywood that's in there that makes up the battery tray, it broke. So I'm going to have to cut out a new battery tray and fit that down in there and glue it in place. But I think if I replace that battery tray and at least get the foam around the battery tray, you know, looking decent again, I could almost go to like Hobby Lobby and buy one of those big cones and just graft that onto the front of the plane and duct tape it on, and I'm good to go. Paul, I might. So Goniac, I'm not 100% sure. So I blame my bad piloting, but what I found after the crash is that this elevator servo is stripped out. Like that's not working no more. That is no bueno. So it could be that this elevator servo failed, and that's what caused me to crash, or it could be that the crash caused the elevator servo to fail. I don't know. But with this elevator servo being all jacked up, I have to suspect that could have been part of the cause. But I'm also not. I'm not going to say that it wasn't 100% my fault. Now I will say that I don't know. I don't crash planes very often. I know that I do have like the P-47 video, and now this, you know, that would kind of state otherwise. But I don't do a lot of crashing, and this is, you know, kind of a rare deal. So we'll see. I certainly think that it is repairable. I'm gonna try to repair it and see what happens. And if it can't be repaired, it may be worth getting another fuselage for it. We'll see. I think it can go back up in the air though, for sure. It's not in bad shape. If this thing had come down and it was like annihilated, I don't think that I would worry about it. But with it just being the nose, and I have all the pieces, you know, to kind of put that puzzle back together and get it back out, I think that it can be repaired. And, you know, it's just a matter of how's it going to hold up over time. But I think with some carbon rods or some, you know, barbecue skewers, something like that to go in there to kind of reinforce everything as I build it back out. If I rebuild it kind of killer plane style, you know, it may be stronger in its rebuilt state than it ever was stock. We shall see. Yeah, when the orange fences jump out in front of my plane, I always crash into them. Now, I've only done prior to the P-47, like I've crashed a few times. I mean, we all have, right? We fly RC airplanes. And as some other folks say, I mean, we play uh, you know, we're dancing with gravity every time we go up in the air. We're trying to defy gravity with an RC model, and at the end of the day, gravity will always win. But how successful we are at navigating that gravity, determines how successful we're going to be at getting a plane down. Now, for the most part, I've had a heck of a lot more successful flights than I've had bad ones. So this one was kind of surprising. This plane does fly awesome. And admittedly, I was doing a fairly aggressive maneuver, because I was going to land right to left, and the wind picked up, and I was going to be coming in with a pretty hot tailwind if I did that, which would have just meant that I rolled out a lot further, which isn't a big deal. But rather than trying to land with a tailwind, I decided to reverse the pattern. But when reversing the pattern, rather than like doing a go around and doing a figure 8 in the air and bringing it around, I was already coming down that side of the runway anyway, and I just kind of peeled out to the right and took a hard left and was bringing it around in basically a slow turn, and I think I just lost. I lost too much airspeed coming through the turn, and it just dropped out of the sky. But as I was trying to turn out of that turn, if that's when my elevator failed, because that's where it happened, is as I was coming out of the turn, and into the left side, I'm coming out of the turn and trying to bring it back around, and rather than coming back around, it just kept going. Boom. So that may have been through that turn when the elevator servo failed, and that's what caused it to kind of drop in nose first. Because I was trying to bring it around, and that would have been, using my right ailerons and straightening the elevator back out. And if the elevator never straightened back out, only one of them did, the plane would have kept moving. In fact, it would have been a more severe roll when the other one came back straight. It would have caused it to kind of torque over. So, now that I'm thinking about it, and the events that took place, I do think it may have been the elevator servo failing that caused the plane to crash. But again, it was a dumb thing to do on my part, and I probably should have just landed the plane with a tailwind. But, did I have the flaps down? I may have been at half flaps. I mean, Barry, the servo has still failed. Hey, Dave's RC, man. It's good to see you, buddy. Thanks for stopping in. Hopefully you're feeling better. Brad, it's possible, but the problem is that I didn't buy the plane. This plane was purchased by Dave's RC. And I mean, it is possible because, now that I am thinking about it, it may very well have been the servo failing that caused the crash. And if he'd be willing to send me another fuselage, that'd be awesome, because that's really all I need to fix it. Well, a fuselage and a canopy, a battery hatch cover, and a nose cone and a pitot tube. I mean, maybe there's a lot of things I need. Not really, Dave. I think that it'd be more trouble than it's worth. You know, we were just discussing what caused the MiG to go in. You know, when I lost the MiG-29, and here's a picture of the beast. So the MiG-29 went in, and I busted the nose cone. Now, I mean, it didn't like completely destroy the airplane, right? The airplane is for the most part still intact, and the wings are over here to the side, and they're still in good shape. But the elevator servo here is stripped out, and you know, as I'm running through the events in my head of what is the most likely cause of the crash, is I was coming through a turn, you know, fairly aggressively, which would have had the plane at an attitude like so, you know, with up elevator. And when I was coming out of that turn, this elevator, I think that going through that turn is when it failed. This elevator would have gone back straight, which would have caused the plane to just, you know, go into a fairly aggressive roll rather than come back straight. It would have just flipped it over and angled it down at the same time. It would have gone into like this weird attitude, kind of like this, with the nose right in the ground, which is exactly what happened. I mean, that's what broke the nose off the plane. In fact, you can see, you know, where it's kind of bent down like that, where the nose, you know, came in. I mean, the plane went inverted, and I was certainly not, you know, I was probably in about a 60-degree roll or a 60-degree bank coming through, and when I went to straighten it out, it never did straighten back out and did this number and came right through on the top of the nose. So, you know, and knowing that that servo is stripped out, I think that it may be because of the stripped servo that the plane went in to its face. So, I mean, it's worth you know, trying to see if they would provide another fuselage, but I totally get it if they won't. And if they won't, I think that the airplane is such a good airframe. I enjoy flying this plane enough that I would pay $99 to fix it. But the problem is that all the other parts for this plane, and I may have been on a soapbox last week about this already, but I'll say it again. Arrows has the worst pricing ever for replacement parts, and maybe it's just because they don't, you know, economies of scale and whatever, they didn't make enough, you know. But the fuselage is $100, and I get that. Most fuselages are $100, and this one does have some. I mean, this was a pretty complex mold. I get that. $100. Yep. I get that this is $100 worth of fuselage. The problem is that they also want like 30. In fact, let's just go there. Let's just go there. I don't know, Kenny. That's what I did, Spencer. I worked the elevator over. Hey, I appreciate your super chat earlier, brother. Thank you. So I'm gonna go over to Hobby Zone and let's just take a look-see. Let's take a look-see at how much it would cost to get this fixed with new parts. With new parts. So let's look for some arrows MiG-29. So look at this. These mother truckers. So let's just start adding up stuff to the cart that's not quite right, that I would like to fix. All right. So the fuselage, 99 bucks, I get it. Fuselage, $99. Fair. Horizontal stabs, but those are tiny. 36 bucks. I got a bent horizontal stabilizer. I got a bent vertical stab. 36 bucks. Dang. I definitely need a new cockpit. 36 bucks. Damn. I need a new nose cone. 12 bucks. 12 bucks isn't bad for the nose cone. I'll go ahead and admit that. 12 bucks, not bad. I need a new pitot tube, but they don't have that. Pitot tube, $2. Very reasonable. Wheels, whatever. I probably want to get some new decals. Let's add that to the cart. And what else do they got? LEDs, don't need them. Supporting rod, good to go. Don't need that. Don't need the control horns. Don't need the wings. Don't need the landing gear cover. Nope. What I got's good. All the retracts are fine. So, look at this. Brand new plane, 330 bucks. All the replacement parts, $229. Because they're asking ridiculous ass prices for the horizontal stabs. Those horizontal stabs shouldn't be any more than like $12 to $15 tops. The damn cockpit should probably be about 12 to 15 bucks tops. Maybe 20. Maybe 20. 10 bucks for the decals, fair price. 12 bucks for the cone, for the nose cone. I'll even say that that's a fair price because it does have a little brass threaded insert for the pitot tube to go into. Fair price. Vertical stabs, 36 bucks. I'd almost say that 36 bucks for the vertical stabs, that's probably fair. But to just go on this like universal pricing of let's just charge $36 for everything. Come on, guys. 36 bucks for the horizontals and for the frickin' cockpit? No damn way, man. Come on. It shouldn't cost $230 to replace that set of parts. It should be, I was looking to be somewhere around 150, 160 maybe. But 230 bucks, they're crazy. Which is why I was like, man, I'd rather just spend the money or take the time to fix it rather than paying 230 bucks and getting, raked through the coals on some freaking spare parts. Those guys are killing me. Yeah, plus shipping. Exactly, George. When you look at all of the the time that it would take to rip the electronics and the fuselage. So the way that the front retracts go into the fuselage is kind of a pain in the ass, and you have to break some plastic parts out and whatever that are molded in, and to break the current verticals off, because they're glued on. When you look at the amount of work that I would have to put into getting the plane flying again after I pay 229 bucks for stupid replacement parts and pulling out all the servos, putting them back in, I would spend probably 2 hours transplanting electronics from one fuselage to the other. And if you value your time at all, whatever you value your time at, 2, 3, 4 hours of work is easily worth $100 unless you're a cheapskate, right? So, with the amount that I would spend on spare parts plus the amount that it would take for me, the amount of time that I would have to invest to transplant the electronics to the new parts, we're looking at the cost of a new plane. So Jeff is right. Buy a new plane and just take the electronics out of this one that are good and keep it for spare parts. I mean, I've still got a lot of good parts here. So, you know, but that'll wait. That'll wait for a new job. I still don't have one of those yet, by the way. So, you know, and unless people are throwing into the Dave's Make 29 donation. but don't worry about that. I will get another one eventually. But I think in the meantime, I think it's worth, at least for the sake of amusement, and just to give it the good old college try, it would take me less time to pour hot water all over the bad parts and try to glue this one back together than it would to transplant all the electronics from this fuselage into another one. So I'm going to attempt to fix this one and get it back up in the air and just yank out that bad servo, put a new one in there and call it a good day, and see what happens. Paul, I'd have a load of extra parts. Dave's RC. I possibly won this one from Dave's RC. So yeah. George, that's what it is, man. I'm just not very good at flying. Kenny, I was flying it with a 4,000 pack. And the 4,000 packs that I fly, before everybody says like, oh, 4,000s are too heavy, the 4,000 smart packs are lighter than 3,200 packs from other manufacturers. So let's slow down. You know, I've got the 3,300 pack. I've got a 3,300 Turnigy pack, and my 3,300 Turnigy pack weighs more than my 4,000 smart pack. You know, Dave's RC, I'm glad to accommodate. I'm glad to accommodate, buddy. So, you have a good night, my man. Dave's RC, get some rest. We might be coming in for a visit on Friday. And then we can make fun of each other for at least an hour. And it'll be awesome. There you go. Joseph Youngblood knows what's up. Yeah, send me some of them turnip greens, Dave's RC. I love some collard green soup. Know what I'm saying? I love me some collard greens with some pepper sauce. All right. uh, you know, Kenny, again, I would agree that the plane doesn't like the weight, but where I had the battery, and the battery that I've been flying it with, or the batteries, you know, the Spectrum 4000 50C Smart Packs, pushed all the way back. The plane has flown awesome. You know, 30, 40 flights. I haven't had any issues with it. It was just that once that it just, you know, went crazy there at the end. So, if it was a bad battery, it's the first time that I've had any issues due to weight management or bad CG or it just not carrying the weight well, if that makes sense. I mean, that's definitely what it is, Nate, and I'm willing to admit that I may have stalled the plane out. That very well may have been the case. Or the servo failed. And the servo didn't fail in a way where it just flops around. I'm not sure what, you know. Yeah, I'm not sure what part of the servo failed, but if you look, like, you can hear the motor in that servo. I shouldn't be sitting here exercising the servo, but I'm going to have to buy another one anyway. Like this one, it feels like it's still got some teeth. You know, so if the teeth aren't catching, it's not just going to flop around free, right? You can hear it grinding away on something in there. So, I don't know. It was definitely something. I just don't know. We'll never know. Yep. Kenny, I did have 40 flights on it. Well, 39 because the 40th one I crashed. The flight was good. You know, the landing was terrible. RC Flyby, thank you, sir. The best flying EDF jet. I haven't flown it yet, but I have heard enough about it where I can almost make this statement and feel like it is valid. I will know tomorrow because I'm taking this thing out to fly it tomorrow. The 90mm F-22 from Freewing, my understanding, is one of the best flying EDF jets ever. Now, I really like the 80mm Avanti S. In my opinion, that is probably one of the other best flying EDFs out there. Just because of the flight envelope. The performance of the Avanti S is pretty outstanding too. I mean, that thing will get up and go. The Hawk FMS Hawk is very good, 80mm type. You know, they have a really good flight envelope. But yeah, I'd say of the bigger, like in the 90mm size, which is, you know, what I would consider bigger, I'd say the F-22. you know, and this is just from what I have seen. Like I said, I can't qualify it in the way that, in saying that I have flown it, but that will change tomorrow. I have one right on the other side of the camera. And I think that, you know, just based on what everyone has told me, that's got to be a true statement. Yeah, but you know, the F-35, I don't think the F-35 is that the F-35 flies as well as the F-22. The F-35 can be a little squirrely. All right. $80mm F4 Phantom. So Kenny, would you say, oh, the 80mm F4 Phantom from E-Flight, not the 90mm F4 Phantom from Free Wing? So I haven't heard a lot of people giving a huge amount of praise to the 90mm F4s from Free Wing, but I have heard a lot of people say great things about the 80mm F4 from E-Flight. The toughest jet to tame. The Arrows RC MiG-29. I'm kidding. That plane is actually, you know, a baby doll. So, the toughest jet to tame. So, the Free Wing F5 can be a little squirrely, and the F-104 Starfighter, those are squirrely airplanes. I don't know, man. I don't know if the F-14. See, I don't think the F-14 is necessarily a hard plane to fly. I just think people are afraid of it. I think if they do an F-14 with the Inrunners, I think that completely changes that plane. The intimidation factor of the F-14 comes from it having swept wings, right? People are going to, you know, be intimidated by a sweep wing aircraft and the way the flight characteristics change when you sweep the wings. But I think that with the wings out, that thing flies great. Wild Bill, I have heard that the MiG-21 actually flies really well. My God, hold on. All right. The T-33. The T-33 is not my favorite airplane because I just don't like the styling of it. Call me crazy. I'm a much bigger fan of like the L-39. I like the L-39. I like the Avanti. There's just something about the T-33 that just looks silly to me. I'm just not a fan. Not to say that the T-33 is bad. The T-33 as an airplane, it's a great plane. It flies awesome. It's just not my cup of tea. It's kind of like the EC-1500. I just don't like. I mean, if I'm gonna buy a model aircraft, I have I don't know, a set of standards, I guess. That sounds really stupid. But I want it to look a certain way. I don't want it to look like a cargo plane. Now, do I have a C-47 sitting here? Yes. That C-47 was sent to me for review. It wasn't because I would choose a cargo plane for me. The PC-21, the Pilatus, that is a sharp-looking airplane. That's an airplane that I like having. The P-47 is a sharp-looking airplane. The Mustang, F-15s, F-16s. The Commander's a sharp-looking airplane. F-18s, I dig the shit out of them. I like the Viper. I like the V-900. I mean, there's a lot of planes out there that I think are sharp-looking airplanes. The T-33 is just not one of them. I think that's a goofy-looking airplane. I think the EC-1500 is a goofy-looking airplane. I mean, there's just some planes out there I just don't care for, man. It's just my opinion. I know they probably fly great, but I'll never know because I wouldn't own the motherfucker. Yeah. Um, it might be. It might be the baddest plane in the land. Yeah, I couldn't fit the UMX dogs in there, but if they made an RC airplane that I could fit the UMX dogs into, it might be worth buying dog parachutes. Hey, so I just noticed Mr. George Watts. Thank you, sir, for making a contribution via PayPal. It is always very appreciated. Paul Kennedy, I have to ask, what are you flying leading into going into an EDF? Are you flying warbirds? Are you flying high wing trainers? Are you flying low wing acrobatic planes, 3D? A good starter EDF. You can go a lot of different directions with that. Brad Butler, thanks for coming by. I do appreciate it. So, Paul Kennedy, I'm going to let you get back to me with an answer. But what I am going to do, quick like, is we are going to do a rundown of all of our sheriffs like we do every week. For the people that are the biggest contributors to the channel, as a show of our appreciation, you get a shout out every week. Oh, but did it? Here we go. Dang, man, I forgot to use the interwebs there for a second. All right. All right. So, to all of the fine folks that are sheriffs, Mr. Flying Times, Mr. Mike SSI, Mr. Spencer Keith, Mr. Dave Kowalski, Mr. William Mergita, Dennis Farley, R.C. Stinger, Joseph Ramsey, Jet Tech Don Atkins, Sandros 54, Ken Sprouse Jr., and George Watts. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your support every month. Thank you guys. For those that want to become members and gain access to some of the best emojis in all of RC, like the UMX Doberman head, you can join the channel for as low as $1.99 a month, and we certainly appreciate it. It helps us bring projects to you like the painting of this awesome F-22. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys' support because I don't have a job right now, and the money that you guys are sending is the only money I got. So that's what it's that's what it is. So thank you guys for making that happen. This is y'all's airplane. You know, this airplane was purchased using funds that we have raised on the channel, and you know, it was actually purchased months and months and months ago, prior to the coronavirus stuff. So, you know, through ad revenue, through super chats, through PayPal contributions, this thing was purchased for the channel. And way back then I said, we're going to do a VFC 29 scheme. It took me a long time to deliver it, but man, I think that what we got here at the end is awesome. And I hope that we're able to shoot some awesome videos of this thing, because this is all, it is because of you that I was able to do it, and for you that I did do it. So I hope that I can, you know, can follow through on getting some great flight footage of this thing up, because I think it is just one of the most awesome looking F-18s I've ever seen. I love the Blue Angels, you know, and like that color scheme will always be one of my favorites. But I mean, this thing, this VFC 12 F-18 is just a bad beast. I love this thing. I love this plane. It's so good looking, y'all. It's so good looking. This was Dustin's, but there is no mistaking whose it is now. It's probably still Dustin's. Did I say F-22? I meant F-18. Ron for the Hills, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. So, did Paul Kennedy? Oh, a 26cc Ultra Stick. So you want to go from an Ultra Stick into flying EDFs? Man, Jeff, there ain't nothing wrong with that. Look, it won't be the first time that my hiney's been drawn up. You know what I'm saying? It almost looked professional, Joseph. It almost looks professional. It almost looks like I cared. Like I am so gung ho Navy that there was no way that I could possibly do this plane a disservice. And if there ever was anything that happened to it, that I would have fixed it during the process. I may have just been bored. I may have just been bored. So I'll tell you what, and this is pretty brave getting it out here. But one of the things that I am very impressed with how this came out, I mean, I shouldn't toot my own horn, but I'm gonna. Because this is all, I mean, every square inch of this plane was painted by me with acrylic paints and an airbrush. And typically those acrylic paints will leave a bit of a chalky finish. They look nice, they leave very sharp lines, but it's a bit of a chalky finish. And when I was done with this one, I put down several coats of the polyacrylic satin finish, and I mean, it came out looking like it was done at a factory. It looks so much better. So, for you guys that are gonna do, custom paints, if you don't want a gloss finish, I would still recommend going with like the polyacrylic satin, and put that on every plane. Either the polyacrylic satin or the polyacrylic gloss. The satin, it's not a gloss finish. It leaves kind of a bit of a sheen to it, but it knocks off the glare, right? I mean, all in all, it came out just looking awesome, and to me, that satin overcoat, that satin clear coat on top, is what makes everything look better. Because it looked nice before, don't get me wrong, but that satin clear coat on the top is what made it pop. Philip Jacobson, I appreciate that. Thank you. In the MiG-29, the big MiG-29 or the Arrows MiG-29? Philip Jacobson, if you're talking about the Arrows MiG-29, yes. Guniak, right now, do not use that receiver in the free wing MiG-29. Get the AR-637. Spend the extra $20. So having the antennas and having the ability to place them wherever you want is a huge advantage over the built-in antenna receivers. So those receivers are great in a small plane, but when you start dealing with bigger batteries, especially two big-ass brick batteries, the receivers cannot pick up signals through batteries, right? So depending on the orientation of the plane at any given time, you could block the signal to the transmitter, and it will cause problems. With smaller planes, 3S batteries don't cause as big of a problem. But when you get into like the bigger 4S and 6S packs, you can cause some issues, and especially when you're running two 6S packs, not side by side, but cradled, one either on the top and one on the bottom, and where you have to sit the receiver in the MiG-29, and if you don't have the MiG-29 yet, you'll see this when you get it. When you pull that canopy off, the canopy's huge. The canopy is the size of a normal airplane. That may not be true, but the canopy is freaking big, all right? When you pull the canopy off, the receiver is going to go back by the second battery. I mean, could you put it somewhere else? Yeah, with some servo extensions. Could you put it in the front? Sure. If you're never going to fly lighter packs, that may be okay. But the way that the MiG-29 is situated, you have, like a front battery bay, a rear battery bay, and a top battery bay, depending on the size of the packs that you're using and where you're gonna shuffle those packs to get the proper CG. So you've got 3 battery locations for the placement of your 2 batteries. Where you put the receiver is going to be right next to one of the batteries. And because you have 2, you can absolutely orient the plane in a way where the signal could get blocked by those 2 big-ass batteries in there. So the AR-630, all of that to say, the AR-630 is probably not the best choice in the MiG-29. I personally would spend the extra $20 and get the AR-637T. That's just me. All right, now, Paul, I didn't forget about you. Coming from an ugly stick, going straight to an EDF, do you fly that stick very aerobatically right now? And what size battery packs do you have today? Do you have 6S packs? Do you mind buying 6S packs? Because if you don't have a problem with money, right, if you're not worried about the expense and you're willing to jump into buying 6S packs, buy up 6S packs. And whoever doesn't agree with me, that's fine. The guy asked on my show, I'm going to answer it my way. I think the best first EDFs, regardless of, if you are ready to get into EDFs, if you are ready for EDFs, right? That is the caveat to this statement. The best first EDFs are the Freewing Avanti S, the Freewing T-33, and the Freewing L-39. Either of those 3 planes, take a look at them. L-39, T-33, Avanti S, pick which one looks the best to you. They all fly very much the same. They are all very forgiving EDFs. They all have a huge flight envelope, although I'd say the Avanti has probably a wider speed envelope than the other 2. Those would still be my choice as a first EDF because of how forgiving they are to fly, how sturdy the landing gear is, how well supported they are, and the range of batteries that you can put in them. All of those planes can accept a wide variety of batteries. At one point I may have said the E-Flight Viper was a good choice. Not so much now because I think the E-Flight Viper has a very limited selection of batteries that you can use with it. The Avanti, you can use as low as a 4,000. You can go all the way up to as big a freaking brick as you can put in there, man. I've seen people fly 7,000s. I saw a guy fly a 6S 8,000 milliamp hour battery in an Avanti. That thing has such light wing loading, you can pile the weight up in it, and it still flies great. So, that's my choices. First EDF, Freewing Avanti, Freewing T-33, Freewing L-39. I think those are all fantastic choices for your first EDF. Yeah, if you've already got some 6S 5000 packs, those are what you want, man. Get you a Freewing Avanti, a Freewing L-39, or a Freewing T-33. Take a look at all 3, pick which one you think looks the best, pull the trigger, and you will be happy. Gary, yes, he specifically when he asked that question, he said, do not include the Habu in this conversation. Before we go, Mickey B, I want to address a question that you had. You asked how I thin my paints. And I didn't mean to run, but I wanted to grab a small little variety of the different types of paints that I use, because they all get thinned a little different. So the idea is that when you're mixing paints for your airbrush, so this is Vallejo paint. Vallejo is typically my paint of choice when I'm airbrushing, specifically this, and it doesn't matter what color. This is the Vallejo Model Air line. The Model Air is made, in fact, any of the Air line of Vallejo paint. So they have Model Air, Game Air. You know, if they've got like Air on the label, these are already thinned for airbrushing. You don't need to do anything to them. You just drop them in your airbrush, good to go. They're a little more expensive because they're already prepped for you, but these are good to go. These are great. The Vallejo Model Color, these are a little thicker. These need about a 50-50 mix of paint to thinner, right? So I'll pour them into a mixing bottle. Just pour the whole bottle in there. Just make sure that the mixing bottle is twice as big as this. So this is a 1/2 ounce, or this is 17 milliliters, I believe. So just make sure, yeah, 17 mil, 0.57 fluid ounces, right? So as long as the bottle will hold at least double of what this has, you know, you dump this in there and then you fill it up with about half of the thinner. About 50% thinner, 50% paint gets you to the consistency that you want with the Vallejo Model Color. The Mission models, these are a little bit thicker, although, I mean, these are great paints as well. They're a little bit thicker than the Vallejo Model Air, so they do need to be thinned out just a tad. But usually these are thinned out to such a degree that I'll put it in my airbrush, dump in like 3 or 4 drops of thinner, mix it up with like a toothpick, put my finger over the top of the airbrush, and then open up the spray, which backwashes a little bit of air in there to kind of bubble it up, and that's enough to thin it out, right? So, you know, it's not quite 50-50. You know, if I put 12 drops of paint in my airbrush, I'll probably put 3 or 4 drops of thinner in there to thin it out. So that's the Mission Models paints. The Tamiya paints, when you take the lid off of Tamiya paints, there is a little line up at the top of a Tamiya paint jar. These actually are very thin anyway, the Tamiya paints. If you fill them up with thinner, you know, to the little line at the top of the lip, which is basically where the threads stop, if you fill it up with thinner and you're using like the X, you know, whatever the paint thinner is from Tamiya, and that's the other thing with the thinners, all the thinners are a little bit different formula. With the Tamiya, you want to use the Tamiya thinners. With the Vallejos, you want to use Vallejo thinners. With the model, you know, Mission models, you want to use Mission model thinners. They're all formulated a little bit different. Most of them are basically the same stuff, but there's enough of a difference where I have noticed, like if I use Tamiya thinner with Vallejo paints, they'll clot up a little bit. But you use Vallejo thinners with Vallejo paints, no problem. Go figure. Yeah, so the Tamiya, you know, they're pretty thin already, but you fill it up with thinner, you know, to like the top of that line in the jar, give it a good shake, ready for spraying. The Model Master paints are about the same as the Tamiya's. They're also very thin. This is a tester's paint, so use the tester's thinner, fill it up to the top of the bottle, good to go. Or, you know, what I was doing is I was taking 2 of these and dumping them into a mixer bottle, and then adding about an extra third, so about a 30% thinner. You know, so instead of 50-50, it was more like 70-30 with the Model Master paints. Anyway, yeah, Mickey B, the biggest thing to keep in mind is not so much how much thinner to use or ratios to use, because it is going to be different with every paint. It really depends on the viscosity of the paint as you're starting, and where you want it to be. And without adding so much that you're reducing the density of the pigmentation by adding too much emulsifier, right? So you don't want to compromise the paint itself by adding too much thinner, or by adding more thinner than you have, or a higher level of emulsifier than you have pigmentation, if all that scientific crap makes sense. So, you know, like with the Tamiya paints, if this is what you're using is Tamiya paints, what I do is I don't even use this bottle. I don't pour straight out of this bottle into my airbrush. I pour this bottle into and hold on again. So I have these little bottles that I got on Amazon. It was like $5 for a bag of like 30 of them. They're almost like little condiment bottles. They're made for paint. They've got a little screw top. You can just dump it, drip paint right into your airbrush, whatever. I'll take this bottle of paint, pour it into this bottle, add thinner, shake, put a little drip on my finger or whatever, and see what the consistency is, usually with a glove on, right? You want the consistency to be about the consistency of milk. That's what you'll hear from, you know, every airbrush channel out there. You want it to be about the consistency of milk. If it's the consistency of milk, you are good to go, and you can spray it. There's also a ton of YouTube videos out there. If you see it, if it's like spattering as it's coming out, you know, you'll get a nice consistent spray pattern if it's the right viscosity. If it's spattering out and it's spitting little blobs of paint, it's probably a little too thick, or you got gunk buildup on the tip of the needle. If it's coming out and it's pulling up and making like a spider web pattern, it's coming out too thin and it's not drying, or it's not like adhering to the you know, whatever the canvas is that you're trying to spray. So there's a lot to it. It's kind of a scientific process, you know, but if you familiarize yourself with how to recognize what an airbrush is doing when the paint is too thick, and what an airbrush is doing when the paint is too thin, and what an airbrush looks, you know, what it looks like when the paint is just right. And I think that once you get there, once you see it come out just right, and that's why it's good, you know, even if you don't believe in paying the extra to get like the Vallejo model air paints, it's good to get at least one bottle, and this will give you an idea of exactly what the viscosity is supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like when it's coming out, because these always spray perfect. These model air paints always spray perfect. So dump some of that in there, see how it looks, and be like, oh, and you'll be enlightened. You know what I mean? And then if you can mix all of your paints to that viscosity from that point forward, you don't need to buy this anymore. Yes, whole milk, Hanger. Whole milk. Not skim. Not 2%. Not 1%. Whole milk. Well, you don't want to lay it down too heavy. No, definitely not yogurt. You don't want to lay it down too heavy, because if you lay it down too heavy, it'll get kind of cakey. Especially when we're talking like acrylics. So what I do, and this is just me, right? I only know what I know. With the acrylics, I want that acrylic to be laid down in smooth, light layers, almost like a dusting, so lay down that dusting, and I spray everything between 15 and 20 pounds, right? Or 15 and 20 PSI, depending on the size gun I'm using, right? So when I was spraying with my 0.5 millimeter needle, for large coverage, I was using 25 PSI. When I'm doing detail work with like a 0.35 millimeter needle, I'll bump it down to like 20 PSI. And if I'm spraying with like a 0.2 millimeter needle, I will bump it down to like 15, between 15 and 20 PSI, because I don't want it just coming out like a madman. So, with all of those though, I lay down very thin coats and build those coats up. Instead of just bleh. It's just like a spray paint can. If you sit there and you try to spray over something 100 times, you're going to get this thick globulous mess. And when you lay down, it just takes patience, right? You build that color up over time and you're going to have much better results. 2ERC. So all of the dark gray areas, like the nose of the plane, all of the dark gray areas that you see on this model, took 1 bottle of paint to do, if that gives you an idea. So it took 1 bottle of the gray. It took 2 bottles of the white, because the white, you have to keep going over the coats over and over again. And it took 6 bottles of the Model Master Goes Gray to do the whole thing. But these are, it's not the same kind of paint. I think the Vallejo would have given me better coverage, to be honest with you. Anyway, I gotta get going, guys. It is 10:14. That means that our man Guniac is about to fire it up. So I want everybody to jump over to Guniac. If you haven't liked this video already, be sure to to hit the like button on your way out. I appreciate everybody coming by tonight. As always, thank you all so much. I hope that we have some good videos coming up here very soon for everybody to enjoy, where we may talk about these paints again. We may have some other, fun kind of surprise stuff coming up. Also, be sure to check out our man Dave's RC. I'll be joining Dave this Friday as a guest on his show, and that should be a lot of fun. I'm sure he's going to want to talk about salad or other green-related things, and I just want to talk about airplanes, right? Anyway, it was a blast. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you all next week. We will see you in a minute on Guniac's channel. You guys all have a great week. We will see you next Monday.